Welcome, friends. In this episode, we'll hear the story of James and Isabella, the galaxy's most wanted alien woman, whose spaceship accidentally crashed into his. Refresh your coffees and sit back. Sci-Fi Traveler is about to begin. There are two kinds of silence in deep space. There's the good kind, the boring kind, the kind you build a whole career around if you're the sort of coward who prefers his adventures pre-cooked and delivered by someone else. Then there's the other kind, the brief, held-breath hush that arrives about a second and a half before something enormous and unbudgeted happens to your ship. I'd spent 11 years mastering the first kind. The universe, it turned out, had been saving the second kind just for me. I was asleep when it started, which is the only respectable way to cross the Virgin debris field. There's nothing out there but the pulverized bones of ships older than my grandfather and roughly 900 million rocks, all of them drifting with the patience of things that have nowhere better to be. My cargo runner, the Marigold Asterisk, a name that had been ironic for at least 3 previous owners and remained so for me, was coasting through on a dead-quiet trajectory I'd plotted precisely so I could sleep through it. I was dreaming, as I do most nights, about the paycheck. Just one more clean haul, one more run without incident, and I could finally afford the little moonside bar I'd been promising myself since I was young and stupid, as opposed to now, when I was merely one of those. In the dream, I was polishing a glass. In reality, a burning escape pod was punching through my hull at a speed I try not to think about. The sound woke me before the impact did, that awful metallic scream of something arriving where it very much should not be. Then the whole ship bucked like a mule that had just been insulted. The lights died. The emergency lights sputtered on the color of a bad bruise, and I was thrown out of my bunk and into the wall, where I had a brief and educational conversation with a bulkhead. Alarms began their chorus. The Marigold has 41 distinct alarms, and in that moment, every single one of them wanted me to know it personally. I found my feet, found the cargo bay door, and found on the other side of it a hole in my ship. A real one. The good kind of hole is the metaphorical kind, the one in your finances. This was the literal kind, punched clean through into the cargo bay, edges glowing cherry red, venting atmosphere in a thin howling ribbon until the emergency membrane crawled over it and sealed the breach with a wet electronic thup asterisk. And there, half swallowed by smoke and the wreckage of what used to be an escape pod, was a shape that did not belong to any manifest I'd ever signed. She climbed out. I want to be precise about this, because I've retold it many times since and people always assume I'm exaggerating. I'm not. She rose out of the smoke like the smoke was embarrassed to be standing next to her. She had skin that held the light strangely, a faint, ethereal luminance, like moonlight had decided to stay somewhere warm for once. And she was, in the plain and unhelpful way that changes a man's entire evening, the most beautiful person I had ever seen. My brain, which had one job, filed this under asterisk problem for later and moved on to the more pressing detail, her ears. They swept up to delicate points, elegant and unmistakably not from any world I'd shipped to. She coughed. She looked around at my burning cargo bay with the mild disappointment of a traveler who'd expected a nicer hotel. Then she looked at me, hair singed, expression frozen, wearing exactly one sock, and she smiled as though we'd scheduled this. "Oh, good," she said. "You're the one who's supposed to rescue me." I opened my mouth, closed it. Somewhere behind me, alarm number 37 began a fresh solo. "Lady," I said, "I can barely rescue myself and I've had 11 years of practice." She stepped over the smoldering ruins of her pod as if it were a puddle brushing ash from a sleeve. "That's disappointing," she said, "but I've worked with less." She tilted her head, studying me with unsettling calm. "What's your name?" "James," I said, "because my mother raised me polite even when my ship is on fire. And this is my ship which you have ruined." "Isabella," she said, extending a hand across the wreckage like we were meeting at a garden party. And I'm afraid, James, that I've done considerably worse than ruin your ship." I didn't get to ask what she meant. That was the exact moment every comm channel on the asterisk marigold came alive at once, screeching, overlapping, urgent, and began, in a dozen furious voices, to scream a single name across the entire sector. Hers. The comm panel in a cargo runner is not built for drama. It's a cheap gray box with a cracked speaker that mostly exists to tell you your docking fees are overdue. In 11 years, I'd heard it deliver bad news, worse news, and one memorable marriage proposal meant for somebody else. I had never once heard it do what it did now, which was light up every channel simultaneously and howl. I scrambled to the cockpit, one sock and all, and dropped into my chair as the voices sorted themselves into words. Imperial Broadband first, a clipped, glacial official reciting a designation number, a threat level I'd previously only seen applied to unstable stars, and then a name. Isabella. Then the outlaw bands, 3 of them cheerfully stepping on each other, all excited about the same name and more specifically about the number attached to it. I saw the number. I read it twice. Then I read it a third time because I assumed my head injury from the bulkhead had rearranged some digits. It hadn't. "That's a bounty," I said slowly, "large enough to buy a small moon." Isabella had followed me into the cockpit and was now leaning against the doorframe, entirely too relaxed, eating something. It took me a moment to recognize what she was eating, and when I did my heart broke a little. "Those are my emergency crackers," I said. "They're stale," she said, chewing. "They're asterisk emergency crackers. They're supposed to be stale. That's the emergency." I gestured wildly at the comm panel, which was still shrieking her name in the voices of what sounded like every armed lunatic within 9 light years. "There is a bounty on your head that could purchase celestial bodies, and you are eating my survival rations and critiquing them." She examined the cracker with a connoisseur's disdain. "The bounty's an underestimate, actually. They lowballed me, insulting, really, after everything." She popped the rest into her mouth. "And your seasoning to cracker ratio is a war crime." I put my head in my hands, briefly, the way you do when the universe has clearly mistaken you for someone who signed up for this. Through my fingers I watched the sensor board, and the sensor board did me the disservice of confirming my worst suspicions. Contacts. 3 of them, then 5, then a swarm I stopped counting. Hard, hot signatures peeling off from behind distant rocks, spinning up their drives, turning as one toward a small, half-crippled, thoroughly unremarkable cargo ship that had absolutely nothing worth chasing on it. Nothing, that is, except her. "They've locked on," I said. My voice had gone flat, the way it does when I've moved past panic into the calm, clear-eyed acceptance of a man watching his retirement fund evaporate. "Isabella. Every ship in this field just turned toward us, Imperial cruisers and the outlaws, at the same time." "Yes," she said, coming to stand behind my chair, peering over my shoulder at the swarm as though it were a mildly interesting weather pattern. "That happens around me. You'll get used to it." "I will asterisk not get used to it. I have a system. My system is that nothing happens. Ever. That is the entire system, and it has worked asterisk flawlessly until approximately 6 minutes ago." I hauled the asterisk marigold into a hard bank, threading her between 2 drifting hulks, and the old girl groaned in every joint like she resented being asked to do her actual job. "Why are the asterisk outlaws after you? Aren't you supposed to be, I don't know, one of them? Isn't that how this works?" "That's a common misconception." She braced a hand on the console as I banked again, unbothered, still infuriatingly composed. "The Empire wants me because I embarrassed them. The outlaws want me because I outsmarted them. It's really a very ecumenical hatred, brings people together." A missile lock warning pinged, and she glanced at it without alarm. "You're drifting high on your turns, by the way. You're wasting your bank angle." "I am not taking flying lessons from my cargo." "You're taking flying lessons from someone who has evaded this exact fleet on 4 separate occasions." She reached past me and with 2 fingers, nudged my hand a half-degree on the yoke. The marigold slid through a gap I'd have sworn was too narrow, and a plasma bolt meant for my engines went sailing harmlessly into a rock the size of a cathedral. 5 now, she added, pleased with herself. I stared at her. At the ears, the glow, the terrible calm of a woman who had turned my quiet, boring, beautifully uneventful life into the most wanted vehicle in the galaxy, and who was correcting my piloting while doing it. Who are you? I said. For the first time the smile faltered, just slightly, just at the edges, the way a mask does when the person behind it forgets to hold it up. She looked at the swarm on the sensor board, at all those ships burning toward us across the graveyard of older, deader ships, and something moved behind her eyes that wasn't amusement at all. That, she said quietly, is exactly what all of them are so afraid you'll find out. There's a specific kind of math that keeps a cargo runner alive, and it isn't the romantic kind. It's fuel curves and mass ratios and the unforgiving arithmetic of, can I make this jump before that man shoots me? I'm good at it. It's the one thing I've always been good at, the way some people are good at cards or lying. So while Isabella critiqued my banking and the swarm chewed the distance between us, part of my brain, the stubborn, calculating part that doesn't panic because it's too busy adding, was quietly running the numbers on how she'd arrived. And the numbers were wrong. I flew us into the belly of a shattered dreadnought, a hull so vast it had its own weather of drifting debris, and killed the engines to coast dark through its ribs. In the sudden quiet, with only the tick of cooling metal and the distant grumble of the swarm searching the wrong grid, I turned in my chair and looked at her. Your pod, I said, the one currently redecorating my cargo bay. It came in on a powered descent. She met my eyes, said nothing. Escape pods don't do that, I went on. Escape pods panic, they blow clear and pray, yours steered. It corrected twice on approach. I felt it in the impacts, 2 little burns right before it hit. Nobody rides a dying pod into a debris field and threads it into a specific ship by accident. I let that sit. You aimed at me. For a long moment the only sound was the ship settling. Then Isabella smiled, but it was a different smile than the one she'd been handing out like party favors. Smaller, realer. I wondered how long that would take you, she said. Most people never notice. They're too busy being rescued to ask why the drowning woman swam toward the leaking boat. So you admit it. I chose you, James. She sank into the co-pilot's seat, and for the first time since crawling out of the smoke she looked tired, not afraid, not sorry, just profoundly, bone-deep tired. Not you personally. I didn't know your name until you told me, and honestly I'd forgotten it once already. She ignored my wounded noise and went on. I chose your asterisk ship. Do you know what makes the Marigold asterisk special? Her charm, her sparkling personality, the fact that she's currently held together with sealant foam and my own tears. She's invisible. Isabella tapped my console, where a dozen diagnostic lights glowed in their usual states of quiet complaint. No modern transponder, no registry uplink. Her drive signature is so old the Imperial trackers don't even have it in their catalog. They filter it out as background noise, a dead ship, junk. You've been running dark for 11 years and you didn't even know it. You're not a smuggler, James. You're an asterisk ghost. You are the only thing in this entire sector the Empire literally cannot see. I opened my mouth to be insulted and found, irritatingly, that I couldn't be. She wasn't wrong. I bought the asterisk Marigold precisely because she was too old and too cheap for anyone to bother taxing, tracking, or coveting. I'd built a whole invisible life out of being not worth the trouble. And this luminous disaster of a woman had looked out at a galaxy of shinier, faster, better ships, and picked the one nobody would ever think to look at. It was, I realized with the sick lurch of grudging respect, exactly what I'd have done. You picked the dumbest ship in the sky, I said slowly, on purpose, because dumb was safe. I picked the asterisk smartest ship in the sky, she corrected. It was just wearing a very convincing costume. She held my gaze, same, I suspect, as its pilot. And there it was, that flicker between us, the first honest thing that had passed across the cockpit since she'd fallen into my life. Not attraction, exactly. Something older and warier than that. The recognition one careful survivor gives another when they finally stop pretending. I'd spent 11 years being nobody so that nobody would come looking. She'd spent however long being everybody's nightmare for the same reason, so that no one would ever guess the frightened, exhausted person underneath was just trying to live. "You're not a criminal," I said. It surprised me hearing myself say it. "Are you?" Something shifted in her face. She started to answer. She didn't get the chance. The whole dreadnought lit up around us, cold, blinding, absolute, as a shadow the size of a city slid across the shattered hull outside and drowned the darkness in light. Not a scout, not an outlaw. My sensor board didn't even bother with warnings. It just went white, overloaded, screaming a single classification I'd never seen it display before. An Imperial cruiser. A big one. The kind they only send when the thing they're hunting is worth more than the ship they send to catch it. It filled the viewport, filled the asterisk sky, its guns swiveling with the slow certainty of something that has already decided how this ends. Isabella looked at it. Then, very quietly, she said the last thing I wanted to hear. "Found me faster this time." You learn things about yourself in the shadow of an Imperial cruiser. I learned, for instance, that when death fills your entire viewport, my body's considered response is to go very still and very calm and start looking for the exits, which is either courage or the deepest cowardice imaginable, dressed up in a pilot's reflexes. I've never been sure which. I killed every active system on the asterisk Marigold until she was as dark and dead as the dreadnought around us. One cold ghost hiding inside a bigger, colder ghost, and I prayed to whatever gods look after the unremarkable that the cruiser's sensors would slide over us the way everyone else's always had. We drifted. The cruiser hung there, vast and patient, sweeping the wreck with searchlights that turned the drifting debris into a slow snowfall of silver. Its guns tracked back and forth. And then, with the ponderous confidence of a thing that has all the time in the universe, it began to move away deeper into the dreadnought's hull, searching the wrong chamber. I let myself breathe. Beside me, Isabella did not. "They'll come back," she said. "They always come back. This is the part where you decide what to do with me, James, and I'd like to make it easier for you." She turned in the co-pilot's seat, and in the faint blue glow of the dead console, her skin's light was the only thing in the cockpit that hadn't gone dark. "So let me show you what everyone in this graveyard is willing to die for." She reached up to her ear, of all places, to one of those elegant points I'd been so distracted by, and pressed it. A seam I'd never have found parted along her jaw, and something slid free into her palm. A sliver of crystal no bigger than a fingernail, pulsing with a light that came from somewhere much too deep inside it. She set it on my console. And though the asterisk Marigold was stone dead, though I'd cut every last circuit myself, the little shard woke my dead panel up out of pure spite, and it played. I won't tell you everything I saw. Some of it I still don't have words for, and some of it I've spent a long time trying to forget. But I'll tell you the shape of it. It was a record, a true one, the kind that can't be faked because it's stitched from 1,000 sources that were never meant to agree. Manifests. Orders, voices in rooms that believed themselves private. And at the center of it, following every thread back to its root, sat the throne of the empire itself. Not a rumor about the throne, not a scandal at the edges. The thing itself, rotten all the way to the crown, a conspiracy so total that half of what I'd thought was the natural order of the galaxy turned out to be its careful, deliberate handiwork. Wars started to move markets. Whole colonies erased to bury an inconvenience, the kind of truth that doesn't just embarrass a government, the kind that ends *1. The shard went dark. The console died again. And I sat there in the silence with my mouth dry and my hands, I noticed distantly, not entirely steady. That's why the outlaws want you too, I said. My voice came out rough. It's not just the bounty. Whoever holds that could rule what's left, Isabella said softly. Or burn it all down. Yes, the Empire wants it destroyed. The outlaws want it as leverage. And she almost laughed, and it was the saddest sound I'd heard in a long time. I just wanted to get it somewhere it could be seen. That's all. That's the whole terrible plan. Show everyone. Let them decide. And for that, every armed soul in the galaxy would rather see me dead than let me reach a transmitter big enough to matter. She looked at the little crystal in her palm. Do you understand now? I didn't crash into your life, James. I hid in it. I brought all of this down on the one man too invisible to be blamed for it. That was cruel of me. I knew it was cruel when I did it, and I did it anyway because I was out of ships and out of time and out of anyone left to trust. And here is the thing I've never been able to explain to anyone since. 11 years I'd built a life out of the word asterisk no. No cargo I didn't understand. No route with surprises. No decision bigger than which quiet nowhere to drift toward next. I had made not choosing into an art form, a religion, a very small and very safe cathedral with room for exactly one worshipper. It had kept me alive. It had also, I understood suddenly, sitting in the dark next to a woman who'd gambled her life on the kindness of a stranger, kept me from ever once being worth anything to anybody. Outside, the searchlight swung back toward us. The cruiser was turning around. They're coming back, Isabella whispered, closing her hand over the shard. You still have time. Power up, hail them, hand me over. The bounty's real. You could buy that little moonside bar you keep dreaming about. Oh, don't look surprised. You talk in your sleep, and you were very specific about the bar. She managed a shadow of her old smile. It would be the smart thing, the invisible thing, the thing. I looked at the cruiser filling the black. I looked at her. And for the first time in 11 years, I felt the word no dissolve on my tongue and something far more dangerous take its place. Yeah, I said, reaching for the ignition. See, that's the problem. I'm getting real tired of being invisible. Here is a fact about desperate plans. The good ones and the suicidal ones look identical right up until the moment they don't. And by then, it's far too late to ask for a refund. I'd like to tell you I had a good one. What I actually had was 11 years of knowing this debris field the way you know the cracks in your own ceiling. One half-dead cargo ship, a fugitive who flew better than me, and a level of spite toward the Empire that had, in the last 20 minutes, matured into something almost like a personality. Okay, I said, hands flying across the console as I brought the marigold snarling back to life. New plan. I stop running because I'm terrible at it and you keep insulting my banking. Constructively. And instead we make this graveyard do the work. Everybody chasing you flies like they've got money. Fast, confident, clean lines. Nobody who flies clean has ever survived the Virgin field because the Virgin field hates clean. I hauled us out of the dreadnought's belly and down into the debris proper, into the tumbling, grinding, murderous heart of it where no sane pilot goes. I've spent 11 years learning to fly ugly. Time it paid for itself. And the transmitter. Isabella had the shard out again, cradled in both hands like something newly hatched. James, showing everyone, was the entire point. A dead man broadcasting to nobody isn't a victory, it's just tidier. I grinned, and I'll admit it wasn't an entirely stable grin. That's the beautiful part. We don't need to build a transmitter. I nodded at the sensor board, at the cruiser now shouldering into the field behind us, at the outlaw wolfpack peeling in from the flanks, at every armed and antenna-bristling ship in the sector converging on one small, ugly target. We're about to be surrounded by the most powerful comm arrays in the galaxy. Empire outlaws, all of them, all locked onto us, all listening. We don't need our own signal. We just need to be close enough to hijack theirs. She went very still. Then she looked at me the way I'd wanted someone to look at me my whole life and had been too much of a coward to earn. "That's insane," she said. "Thank you. That's genuinely insane. You'd have to hold them at exactly the right range, close enough to piggyback their arrays, far enough that they can't board or vaporize us, in the middle of a debris field in this." She gestured at the groaning, wheezing, held together by spite entirety of my ship, and thread it all without dying on the first try, with no second one available. "Right on all counts," I said, "so I'm going to need you to fly." For one heartbeat she didn't move. Then Isabella laughed, a real one this time, bright and startled, and, I like to think, a little bit in love with the sheer stupidity of it, and she slid the shard into the console's reader and dropped her hands onto the co-pilot controls. What happened next I've never been able to describe to anyone's satisfaction, so I've mostly stopped trying. We flew. Not she and I taking turns, together, her hands and mine on the same broken ship, her reading the enemy formations while I read the rocks, her correcting my banking, constructively, while I threaded the marigold through gaps that existed for fractions of seconds. A cruiser round meant for our engines cratered a hull the size of a moon behind us. Two outlaw fighters, flying clean and confident and doomed, followed us into a tumbling debris stream and came out the far side as an expanding cloud of very confident scrap. I brought us in close to the great Imperial cruiser, so close I could count the rivets, so close its own guns couldn't depress far enough to bear, and I held us there, tucked against its flank like a tick on a bull, riding its shadow through the storm. "Now," I said, "their array, can you?" "Already in." Isabella's hands danced over a panel that had no business talking to an Imperial warship, and was doing it anyway, the shard feeding her a path through their systems that only someone who'd built her whole life around this single act could have found. Piggybacking the primary array, and the outlaw bands, and oh that's petty, I love it, their internal channels too, every screen on every ship. James, when I open this, there's no closing it. Every soul in the sector hears everything. The Empire will know the exact instant they've lost. Behind us, the cruiser's captain had realized what we were doing. I could tell because every gun that could bear on us was now trying very hard to, and the whole field had gone tight and bright with panicked fire. "Do it," I said, "show everyone." She looked at me. One last time, the fugitive and the ghost, two invisible people about to become the most visible thing in the galaxy, and something passed between us that I've spent the rest of my life failing to deserve. "For the record," Isabella said, "your banking's improved." Then she opened the channel, and the truth began to pour out across every screen in the sector, and the whole galaxy stopped shooting long enough to listen. There's a particular silence that falls when a great many people who intended to kill you suddenly realize they have a much larger problem. I'd never heard it before. I doubt I'll ever hear it again. It rolled across the sector like a held breath, every gun that had been trying so hard to end us going quiet all at once, as the truth Isabella had carried in her ear for gods know how long spilled out onto every screen on every ship at once, unstoppable, undeniable, impossible to unsee. I watched it happen on my own cracked console. I watched the outlaw wolfpack, halfway through a firing run, peel off in confusion as the record laid bare exactly which of their crimes the Empire had quietly funded. I watched two Imperial frigates that had been coordinating our destruction abruptly stop coordinating anything, because the file had names in it, and some of those names were aboard those frigates, and some of them belonged to the men giving the orders, and some to the men receiving them. And there is nothing in this universe quite so paralyzing as a chain of command discovering in real time that it is a chain of accomplices. "It's spreading," Isabella breathed. Her hands had gone still on the controls. On the sensor board, the tight noose of ships around us was unraveling, every vessel suddenly far more interested in every other vessel than in one small, ugly cargo runner tucked against a cruiser's flank. Sector relays caught it. It's jumping the buoy network. James, it's asterisk out. It's really out. They can't bury it now. They'd have to bury the whole galaxy. The great cruiser we'd been hiding against gave a slow, wounded shudder. Not from weapons, from within. I like to imagine it was the sound of a very large, very old life finally coming apart. Its guns drifted off target and stayed there, forgotten, as whoever was left in command found themselves with far more urgent things to point them at than us. "They're not even looking at us anymore," I said, and I heard the wonder in my own voice. 11 years I'd worked to be beneath notice. It had taken igniting a galactic scandal from the cargo bay of a dying ship to finally, completely achieve it. "We did it. We're invisible again." "You did it," Isabella said. "We did it. You brought the crime. I brought the terrible ship." I eased us out from under the cruiser's flank, out of the shadow, out into the drifting open dark of the debris field's far edge where uncharted space began, and no one, for once, was chasing us into it. "That's a partnership." I looked it up. She laughed, that real, bright, startled laugh I'd have crashed 100 ships to hear again. And then she did something that undid me more thoroughly than any cruiser could have. She reached over in the quiet, in the dark, and she took my hand off the yoke and held it, and she didn't let go. "The bounty's gone," she said softly. We both watched it happen on the comm board, the number that could have bought a moon flickering, collapsing, dissolving into a scandal that no longer had a throne to pay it. "By morning I won't be the most wanted woman in the galaxy. I'll just be a woman with a very complicated past and no particular place to be." She looked at me, and there was something almost shy in it, which on a woman who'd stared down an empire was frankly ridiculous. Which is a problem, actually. I picked this ship because it was going nowhere in particular. I never planned past being seen. I never planned to survive asterisk it. "Funny thing," I said. My throat had gone tight, and I blamed the atmosphere recyclers, which is what I always blame. "I've got a route. Well, I've got the asterisk opposite asterisk of a route. 11 years of drifting toward the quietest nowhere I could find, so nobody would ever come looking." I turned my hand over in hers, so we were holding on properly, the ghost and the fugitive, the two most invisible people in creation drifting free at the ragged edge of the map. Turns out the quiet nowhere is a lot less appealing than I remembered. I was thinking of pointing us somewhere with a little more trouble in it. Somewhere with a moon, maybe. Somewhere a person could put a bar. "You'd need a partner," Isabella said. "For a bar, someone to keep the books, critique the seasoning. Constructively. Always." Ahead of us, uncharted space opened like a door left ajar, dark and endless, and for the first time in either of our lives, not full of anyone hunting us through it. The asterisk marigold groaned in every joint, complained about the course correction, and carried us out into it anyway, held together by sealant foam and spite, and apparently from that day forward the two of us. I never did learn to fly clean. She never did stop correcting my banking. The moonside bar took another 2 years, and about 4 more brushes with people who hadn't gotten the memo that we were retired, and every single one of them I'd choose again without a heartbeat's pause. Because I spent 11 years being nobody so nobody would find me. And then a burning pod tore a hole in my ship and my life, and out of the smoke climbed the one person in the whole wide galaxy I'd spent all that time hoping, without ever once admitting it, would come looking. Her name was Isabella. Mine is James. And that's the story of how the most wanted woman in the galaxy crashed into my spaceship, ruined my crackers, saved my life, and gave a very small and very cowardly ghost of a man the one thing he'd never had the courage to steal for himself: a reason to be seen. Yes, friends, we've come to the end of the story of Isabella, the most wanted woman in the galaxy, and James. Before we leave, I have a small request. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave your thoughts about the story in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more stories. See you in the next episode.